I regularly discover games that no one's talking about thanks to the awesome viewers of this channel. And sure, there's a reason some games aren't popular, but every once in a while a game comes along that not only is unknown, but deserves way more attention. One such game is Bloody Spell. Have you heard about this game before? I hadn't before a viewer recommended it in the comments of my Badass Female Protagonist series, and I'm so glad he did, because this is a total hidden gem that more people should check out. So here we are. Now that I've done absolutely everything in this game, here's my review after 100% for Bloody Spell. Originally released in 2022 after a lengthy early access period, Bloody Spell is the first game developed by Chinese studio
Yilong Yushi.
And while it's clear this isn't a huge studio with a AAA budget, it's equally clear just how passionate and committed to creating a great experience this team is, with constant community engagement, updates, and enhancements with things like the launch of new game modes. If I were to boil it down, Bloody Spell feels like the atmosphere and vibe of Nioh, mixed with the challenging action combat of Ninja Gaiden, and a badass heroine decked out in a wardrobe of over-the-top outfits like Stellar Blade. You can play as a male or female character, but with all of the insane costumes, my choice was clear. You play as an assassin who must rescue your sister who's been kidnapped by a demonic clan. For reasons. The story's pretty throwaway and reminds me of the early days of beat-em-ups, where it's really just an excuse to fight baddies. The campaign's divided into 10 mostly linear levels, with lots of explorable nooks and crannies for treasure and loot, as well as side paths that double back. But you shouldn't expect the labyrinthine level design from Dark Souls, or an open world, or anything like that. This is another element that feels decidedly old school. I've heard some people call this game a Souls-like, and to be clear, this is definitely not a Souls-like. But that doesn't mean it won't be challenging, if not straight up punishing if that's what you're into.
Where the f***?
There are 5 difficulty levels, starting with the easiest called Paradise, up to easy, normal, hard, and topping out with Hell difficulty. And yes, Hell is, well, hell to play through. I don't recommend that unless you're a glutton for punishment. I played through the story twice, first on normal and then on hard, which felt about right to me. The fast-paced action combat emphasizes timing and precision, having you dole out pain with combinations of light, heavy, and magic attacks. You need to pay close attention to enemy tells to time blocking, dodging, or throwing daggers to interrupt attacks. There's even a magical parry to dish out some immediate retribution. And yes, there are motherfucking air combos. So, IGN should have no problem reviewing this game. Just kidding. We know how IGN feels about the female form.
I don't know why, but for some apparent reason I can't stand women with sexy bodies.
Now you won't be managing stamina, and you can't turtle up behind a shield, mostly because there aren't any shields in the game. You're encouraged to play aggressively, but can't just button mash or
gonna have a bad time.
The hits feel impactful, the action is responsive, and the combat flow is consistently thrilling. There are 6 weapon types, including blades, spear sticks, swords, knuckles, dual halberds, and staffs, each with unique movesets and combos that you unlock as you use them. You'll also equip various pieces of armor for your head, body, hands, and feet, as well as 2 accessory slots for passive buffs. Each of the weapons and armor types have various stats, like base damage, critical hits, and more. Whether in chests, through the store, or dropped by enemies, you're always picking up some new piece of gear. And with the metric ton you'll be picking up and comparing, the game almost has a looter feel at times, where you'll be regularly swapping out for the new hotness. And of course, there are costumes. So many costumes. You'll find and unlock many as you play, and there's also a ton of DLC. Normally I wouldn't pay for DLC costumes, especially since the full price of this game with all of the DLC is nearly $160. But thankfully Steam has really steep discounts at times. I got everything for under $25 during the autumn sale, and I don't regret a penny of it. These outfits are over the top in the best way possible. You'll continue to get more powerful as the game progresses, both through the piles of new and better equipment, but also by acquiring and upgrading skills and abilities. As you kill enemies with each weapon type, you'll earn proficiency that you can use to get new skills for that weapon. For example, using swords will open up more moves and combos to kill enemies with swords. The nice thing about this system is it encourages you to use all of the weapon types, so you have a suite of moves regardless of the next beefy weapon you pick up. As you kill enemies, destroy objects in the environment, and open up some chests, you'll acquire blood that you can use at the store. These pillars act similar to a merchant. Here you can sell equipment or items, buy new equipment, or buy amber that you can use for upgrades. Each amber type is specific to a passive or active bloody spell.
He said it! He said it!
Oh, that's why they call it that.
These skills require a certain number of amber pieces to either unlock it or upgrade it to a more powerful version. The passive skills are, of course, always available, but you can only map 3 active skills at a time. Since one of those is the ability to heal by drinking wine, yep, like in real life, I tended to only swap out the other 2 skill slots. Even though this isn't the most detailed and intricate system, the upgrades feel meaningful, taking you from a badass to a force of nature by the end. You'll gain all sorts of abilities, like a hook that lets you reach out of the way areas, or summoning a demon to unleash retribution on your enemies. These are totally satisfying to play around with, and get better and better as you play. And you'll really need all of that because you're up against an army of different enemies that can be really tough, especially on harder difficulties. There's of course fodder enemies like mutant dogs or guards that don't put up much of a fight on their own, but can kick your ass in a group, to beefier enemies like these spider women or butchers that can crush you on their own and usually bring their friends. These culminate in a dozen or so boss fights. Most are human and often fight solo, but make no mistake, these can be punishing as hell and where I hit a few walls when going through on hard difficulty. And that's after leveling up and equipping powerful gear. These are a real test of your skill, and at times, your patience. After whittling down a few of the big brutes, you can ride them to unleash the pain, which is never not satisfying. When not slicing, dicing, or riding baddies, you'll be solving puzzles, platforming, and exploring for loot. There's a steady drip feed of new elements, so you're never doing the same thing for too long, which keeps the gameplay fresh. And these side diversions are mechanically varied and a lot of fun for the most part. There's a decent amount of traversal challenges, like scaling the platform of a shaft.
Shaft! You're damn right.
Or avoiding the rows of buzzsaws in a hallway of pain. Villagers will sometimes ask for help, like the one that needs you to spear rats. Seems like overkill in hindsight, but who am I to judge? There are even slide puzzle minigames to open some of the bigger chests, which were a nice diversion. I really appreciated all of the different things I was doing in addition to combat, though some of these activities are better than others. Like the crafting minigame, if you can even call it that. You melt down the iron ore you've collected to fill pots of various shapes and sizes. If you fill the pot with enough, without spilling any of the molten ore, you'll upgrade the selected weapon. But this feels like total trial and error and mostly frustrating, though this is definitely the exception and not the rule. Another area that's decidedly very solid is the presentation and performance. the gameplay is buttery smooth with solid frame rates, although it'll briefly stutter when autosaving. Visually, the game's a looker, even though it's clear we're working with a lower budget. To me, this looks like a AAA PS4 game, with some moments of real brilliance. The environments are detailed, if a bit simple, with a lot of variety, from a dank prison to thatched roof villages to an imposing fortress. The solid lighting does a lot to elevate the scenes, making them pop. The character and enemy designs are fantastic, particularly the main character. It's clear the team put a lot of care into his or her design and animations. All of the movesets and combinations flow incredibly well, with fluid, impactful action, and the physics add something to the overall experience.
It's like a reward.
And that's not to mention the metric ton of costumes. Holy cow! Particularly when taking all of the DLC costumes into account, there's such variety, creativity, and artistry on display, and are constantly fun to check out. Whether you want to look like a badass soldier, a demon, or a cat, they've got you covered. With so many options, I found myself changing costumes every few minutes, each one more over the top than the last. The sheer attention to detail with different hairstyles, materials, accessories, and in some cases even different weapons, complete with new movesets, is awesome. And the cutscenes reflect the costumes you have on. It's really impressive stuff. Oh, and there's even clothing damage, which is really hard to believe considering the thread's barely holding it all together. Now, I do actually wish I could mix and match pieces of the costumes instead of only equipping full outfits, but that's definitely more of a wish list versus any sort of actual gripe. With the incredible visuals and costumes, you may find yourself spending way more time in the photo mode than you want to admit. Seriously, with all of the bells and whistles they packed in, I can't tell you how much time I spent toying around with it. Similar to your mom, you'll occasionally see some rough textures and faces with that vacant doll stare when up close, but thankfully that's rare. And with the camera pulled back, the game is a real stunner at times. With one big exception: the menus. Ugh, the menus! I'm not sure how a game can get such impressive animations, lighting, and effects, and yet have the ugliest menus known to man. But I guess if there had to be an area to cut corners, that'd be the one I would have picked. The other thing that's a bit hit or miss is the translations. All of the voices are in Chinese, but most of the text is in English. And I say most because, strangely enough, not everything has been translated. So there are some scenes where you'll just have to deal with not knowing what was said. And even when translated, it sometimes feels like a Google Translate fever dream, leaving you to piece together any real meaning. I really appreciated the completion process for this game. Some developers just get it, and
Yi Long Yu Shi.
clearly do. First off, it's easy to keep track of your achievements right there in the Achievements menu. Each one is clear enough to understand with simple indications for what you've done and still need to do. Also, every achievement comes with a reward. And I can't stress this enough, more developers need to do this. And sure, some would say that completion is its own reward.
But it's important to remember one thing. You're wrong.
In addition to the achievement badge, each one you unlock will also grant you something. Whether it's blood, a piece of armor, or another costume, each one felt like it was worth the effort. A single playthrough is pretty short, only about 8 hours, but plan for 2 to 3 times as long to do everything. You'll gain some abilities after your first time through the story that will let you get to previously inaccessible areas. So you should plan for at least a partial second run. There isn't a New Game Plus, but after completing the story, you can use the chapter select to revisit areas with all of your upgrades. This was super handy for cleaning up most of the remaining achievements, including collectibles, unlocking all bloody spells and weapon skills, as well as lots and lots of fighting achievements for killing a certain number of each enemy type. You'll need to complete at least one run on hard difficulty, which I recommend for a second playthrough, unless you're wanting the challenge right off the bat. And you'll need to play through the various challenge modes. These are different twists on wave-based challenges to keep you playing for a little longer. Oh yeah, there's also a multiplayer mode. I'm not kidding, the development team keeps adding to this game. They've even promised a rogue mode here as well, so I'll have to check that out when it launches. Overall, I really dug Bloody Spell. It's a beautiful, challenging, and fun action game made by a clearly passionate team. It may not have the polish of a big-budget game, but that's a trade-off I'm willing to make for this experience. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and you can get it on sale for super cheap. What more can you ask for? If you like what you see, get this game now or at least put it in your wish list for the next big sale. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Have you played Bloody Spell? Have you ever even heard of it before? Also, what's another game that not enough people are talking about? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit like and of course subscribe. And if you want more of my thoughts, check out my video right here. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.